What started as a joke turned into a galactic proposal. He can't escape * Marcus. Chen had never imagined that being 17 and part of Earth's first diplomatic mission to another world would change his life forever. The transport ship hummed quietly as it approached Zatara, a planet covered in crystal forests and floating cities that sparkled like jewels against the purple sky. As a junior Marine cadet, Marcus was meant to observe and learn, not make history. The Zatarians had been peaceful since first contact 3 months ago. Their government had welcomed Earth's delegation with open arms, eager to share knowledge and culture. Marcus found their civilization fascinating. The aliens were tall and graceful, with silver-blue skin that seemed to glow from within, and their large violet eyes held an ancient wisdom that made him feel very young. During their 3rd week on Zatara, the human delegation visited a small village nestled between 2 crystal mountains. The Zatarian children were curious about the Earth. Visitors, though most kept their distance. Their parents had taught them to be respectful, but cautious around the strange beings from the distant. Blue World Marcus was admiring the way sunlight reflected through the crystal trees when he heard soft crying. Behind a cluster of luminescent flowers, he found a small Zatarian girl, probably 8 years old, in human terms. Her silver-blue skin was darker than the adults, and her violet eyes were filled with tears. She wore a simple white dress that seemed to shimmer with each sob. The other Marines were busy talking with village elders about trade agreements and cultural exchange. Marcus knelt beside the crying child, his heart aching at her distress. She looked up at him with those enormous violet eyes, clearly frightened by his human appearance. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, keeping his voice gentle. "What's wrong, little one?" The girl understood basic English, as all Zatarians learned it in preparation for human contact. She sniffled and pointed toward the other children, who were playing a complex game with floating crystal orbs. "They say I'm too small," she whispered. "They say humans are scary, and I shouldn't talk to you." Marcus smiled warmly. He had always been good with children, and something about this little girl reminded him of his younger sister back on Earth. "Not scary, am I? My name is Marcus." "What's yours, Zara?" she said quietly, wiping her nose with the back of her small hand. "That's a beautiful name," Marcus told her. "You know what, Zara? Those other kids are wrong. You're not too small for anything. You're perfect just the way you are." Zara's tears began to slow, and she looked at him with curiosity rather than fear. "Really, really," Marcus confirmed. "In fact, you're so special that if it would make you feel better, I promise I'll marry you when you grow up." "How's that?" was meant as a joke, the kind of harmless, silly thing adults say to make children smile. Marcus had no idea that his words carried weight beyond simple comfort. He didn't notice how the nearby Zatarian elders suddenly stopped their conversations and turned toward them with wide, shocked eyes. Zara's face lit up with the first genuine smile she'd shown all day. She reached out and took Marcus's hand in both of hers, her small fingers warm against his palm. "You promise?" she asked seriously, as if his answer would shape her entire future. Marcus chuckled, thinking she was playing along with the joke. "I promise, little Zara. When you're all grown up, if you still want to, I'll marry you." The Zatarian elders began whispering frantically among themselves in their musical language. Some of the human diplomats noticed the commotion and approached, but Marcus was focused entirely on the little girl whose tears had finally stopped. "I will wait for you," Zara said solemnly, still holding his hand. "I will become worthy of your promise." Marcus patted her head gently, still not understanding the significance of what had just occurred. To him, it was simply a successful attempt to cheer up a sad child. "You're already worthy, Zara. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." One of the Zatarian elders, an ancient female with intricate silver markings on her face, approached them carefully. She spoke in heavily accented English, her voice filled with something that sounded like awe. "Young human," she said quietly, "do you understand what you have done?" Marcus looked up from where he knelt beside Zara, confused by the elder's serious tone. "I was just trying to make her feel better. She was crying."
"Elders."
Violet eyes studied his face intently. "Among our people, a promise of bonding given while holding hands in the presence of witnesses is sacred. It cannot be broken or forgotten." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but Captain Rodriguez, the mission leader, quickly stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. I'm sure you understand that Cadet Chen is very young and unfamiliar with your customs. He meant no disrespect. The elder nodded slowly. We understand that humans do not know our ways. The child is also young. Perhaps in time, both will learn what this promise truly means. The conversation was smoothly redirected to safer topics, and Marcus was pulled away by his superiors for a gentle lecture about being more careful with his words. But as they prepared to leave the village that evening, he noticed little Zara watching him from her family's crystal dwelling, her violet eyes bright with hope and determination. 3 weeks later, the diplomatic mission concluded successfully. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchange programs were established, and humanity gained its first alien allies. Marcus returned to Earth with the rest of the delegation, his head full of wonders he'd seen and experiences he'd never forget. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Zatara's purple sky behind, Marcus looked out at the stars and thought about the crying little girl he'd comforted. He hoped she was happy and had made friends with the other children. It never occurred to him that on Zatara, a small girl was beginning 15 years of preparation for the most important promise of her life. The joke that was meant to last a moment would echo across the galaxy for years to come. 15 years had passed since Marcus Chen's return from Zatara, and the diplomatic mission felt like a distant dream. Now 32, he lived a quiet life in Portland, working as a senior robotics engineer for a tech company that specialized in AI-assisted manufacturing. His small apartment overlooked the river, and his days followed a comfortable routine of work, evening runs, weekend projects in his garage workshop. Marcus had never married, though not for lack of opportunity. Several relationships had come and gone over the years, but something always felt incomplete. His family often teased him about being too picky, but Marcus could never explain the strange feeling that he was waiting for something, or someone, without knowing what. On a typical Tuesday evening in late October, Marcus was heating leftover pizza and reviewing code for a new assembly robot when the ground began to tremble. At first he thought it was an earthquake, common enough in the Pacific Northwest. But the vibrations had a rhythm to them, a deep humming that seemed to come from above rather than below. Marcus rushed to his living room window and pulled back the curtains. What he saw made him question his sanity. A massive ship hung silently in the evening sky, its hull gleaming like polished silver against the darkening clouds. The vessel was easily the size of a city block, elegant and organic. In design, covered in flowing patterns that seemed to pulse with soft light. No way, Marcus breathed. His pizza forgotten as it burned in the microwave. The ship descended slowly, gracefully, until it came to rest in the large park across from his apartment complex. Trees bent under the displaced air, and every car alarm in the neighborhood began wailing. Within minutes, news helicopters buzzed overhead like mechanical insects, and the streets filled with people pointing phones at the sky. Marcus's hands shook as he grabbed his own phone and started recording. He recognized the ship's design immediately. Zatarian. But why were they here? Earth and Zatara maintained friendly relations, but official visits were always announced months in advance through proper diplomatic channels. The ship's hull began to shimmer. A section dissolved into motes of light, creating an elegant doorway. Marcus held his breath as a figure emerged, tall and graceful, wearing flowing robes that seemed to be cut from starlight itself. Even from his apartment window, Marcus could see the distinctive silver-blue skin and the way the figure moved with dancer-like precision. The Zetarian walked across the park with purpose, and Marcus felt his heart stop as he realized the alien was heading directly toward his building. Neighbors were gathering in the street, some brave enough to approach, others keeping their distance. Police sirens wailed in the distance. But the Zetarian ignored everything except their destination. Marcus's doorbell rang. He stood frozen in his living room, pizza smoke drifting from the kitchen, his phone still recording nothing but his own trembling hands. The doorbell rang again, patient but insistent. Taking a deep breath, Marcus walked to his front door and looked through the peephole. A Zetarian female stood on his doorstep, her violet eyes looking directly at the peephole as if she knew he was watching. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with high cheekbones and silver hair that fell in elaborate braids to her waist. Her robes were clearly ceremonial, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move in the light. With shaking hands, Marcus unlocked his door and opened it slowly. The Zetarian smiled, and something about that smile tugged at his memory like a half-remembered song. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice melodic and warm. "I am Zara. I have returned to honor our promise." Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. Zara, the little girl from the village. "But you were just a child. I was trying to cheer you up. I never meant." "I know what you meant," Zara said gently. "But I also know what you promised," he said. "You would marry me when I grew up. I am grown now, and I have come to claim my husband." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Marcus gripped the doorframe for support as memories flooded back. A crying child, violet eyes filled with tears, a joke meant to bring comfort. His casual words echoing across 15 years to land on his doorstep like a cosmic bill come due. "Zara, listen," Marcus said carefully, aware that news crews were already setting up across the street. "I was 17. I was just trying to make you feel better. It wasn't a real proposal. It was just something kids say." Zara's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Perhaps human children make such promises carelessly," she said, "but I am not human, and I have spent 15 years preparing to be worthy of you." "Preparing how?" Marcus asked, though part of him was afraid to know. "I learned your language perfectly," Zara said, switching briefly to flawless Mandarin, then French, then back to English. "I studied your culture, your history, your literature. I trained in combat to protect you, in diplomacy to honor you, in the arts to please you. I have turned down 17 suitors from noble Zetarian houses because my heart belongs to the human who showed kindness to a frightened child." Marcus felt the weight of her words settling on his shoulders like lead. This wasn't just about a childhood promise anymore. This was about a woman who had shaped her entire life around his throwaway comment. "I need to sit down," Marcus said weakly. Zara stepped into his apartment without invitation, moving with the fluid grace of her species. She looked around his modest living space with genuine interest, taking in his engineering textbooks, his half-finished robot projects, the photos of his family on the walls. "You have made a good life," she observed. "Simple, but honest. I respect this." Marcus sank onto his couch, running his hands through his hair. "Zara, I'm honored, truly. But you can't just show up after 15 years and expect me to marry you. I don't know you. You don't really know me." Zara sat gracefully in the chair across from him, her robes settling around her like liquid silver. "Let us learn," she said simply. "Zetarian bonding customs allow for a courtship period before the ceremony. I am prepared to prove my worth. As a mate, that's not how it works on Earth," Marcus protested. "People date, they fall in love, they choose each other freely. And did you not choose me freely when you gave your promise?" Zara asked. "You could have ignored my tears as the other humans did, but you knelt beside me and offered comfort." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Outside, he could hear news crews setting up, police cordoning off the area, government vehicles arriving. The whole world was about to learn that an alien princess had come to Earth to marry a robotics engineer from Portland. "This is insane," Marcus muttered. Zara leaned forward, her violet eyes intense. "Marcus, Chen of Earth, I am not here to force you into anything. Zetarian law requires consent from both parties. But I'm asking you to give us a chance. Give me the opportunity to show you the woman I have become, and perhaps you will find that the promise you made in kindness could grow into something real." Before Marcus could respond, loud knocking echoed from his door. Official voices called out, identifying themselves as federal agents. The circus was about to begin. Zara stood smoothly, her hand moving to what Marcus suddenly realized was a weapon concealed in her robes. "Shall I tell them we are not receiving visitors?" she asked politely. Marcus stared at her, this strange, beautiful dangerous woman who had traveled across the galaxy for a promise he'd forgotten he'd made. His quiet life was over, one way or another. "No," he said finally. "Let them in." "Zara, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person who made that promise." Zara smiled, and in that smile, Marcus caught a glimpse of the child she'd been and the woman she'd become. "Neither am I," she said. "That is what makes this interesting." The next morning, Marcus woke up in a world that had gone completely insane. His face was on every news channel. His phone had over 300 missed calls. And there were protesters outside his apartment building holding signs that read everything from "Marry the Alien Princess" to "Earth for Humans Only." Zara had spent the night in his guest room after a tense 4-hour meeting with federal agents, Zetarian diplomats who had arrived in a smaller ship, and what seemed like half the U.S. government. The official conclusion was that, while the situation was unprecedented, no laws had been broken. Zara was on Earth legally as a diplomatic guest. Marcus was free to make his own choices about their alleged engagement. What the officials hadn't mentioned was the growing concern among intelligence agencies about how this would affect Earth-Zatara relations. The alliance had brought incredible technological advances and opened trade routes to dozen other species. If Marcus rejected Zara, would the Zetarians see it as an insult? Would it damage the careful diplomatic progress of the past 15 years? Marcus found Zara in his kitchen, somehow having prepared a breakfast that smelled like cinnamon and tasted like memories he'd never had. She wore simpler clothes today, pants and a soft blue sweater that made her silver skin glow warmly. Looked almost human, except for those incredible violet eyes. "You didn't sleep well," she observed, setting a plate in front of him. "How could you tell?" Marcus asked, taking a bite of what might have been pancakes but tasted like the best thing he'd ever eaten. "Your species shows fatigue differently than mine, but the signs are there," Zara said, sitting across from him. "Also, I heard you pacing at 3 in the morning." Marcus looked at her suspiciously. "Zetarian hearing, is that good?" "Among other abilities," Zara said with a small smile. "We are not so different from humans, but we evolved on a world where predators hunted by sound. Sharp hearing was necessary for survival." This casual mention of her alien nature reminded Marcus of just how little he knew about her. "Zara, can we talk honestly about this situation?" "I have been nothing but honest with you," she replied. "I know, but I mean really talk. Not as a promised bride to her intended husband, but as to people trying to figure out an impossible situation." Zara considered this, then nodded. "Very well. What would you like to know?" Marcus set down his fork and looked directly into her eyes. "Why me, really? You're clearly intelligent, beautiful, probably royalty or something close to it. You could have anyone on your planet? Why spend 15 years obsessing over a human who made a silly promise to a child?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, staring into her own cup of what looked like coffee, but smelled like flowers. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "Do you remember what you said to me that day, besides the promise?" Marcus thought back. "I told you that you weren't too small, that you were perfect the way you were. You told me I was worthy," Zara said quietly. "Do you understand what that meant to a child who had been rejected by her peers, whose parents were too busy with diplomatic duties to comfort her tears?" Marcus felt a pang of guilt. "Zara, I'm sorry you were lonely, but I'm not finished," she said gently. "That day you saw me not as an alien child to be feared or pitied, but simply as someone who needed kindness. You knelt to my level, you spoke to me as an equal, you made me feel valuable. No one had ever done that before." She looked up at him, and Marcus saw vulnerability in those violet eyes that made his chest ache. "I fell in love with your kindness first," Zara continued. "Then I learned about you, about humans, about Earth. I watched your entertainment, read your books, studied your history. I fell in love with your entire species' capacity for growth, for changing, for becoming better than you were. But mostly, I fell in love with the idea of the man you might become." "And what if I didn't become that man?" Marcus asked quietly. "Then I would have been disappointed, but I still would have honored the promise," Zara said. "But you did become him, Marcus. You work to create things that help people. You live simply, but honestly. You are kind to your neighbors, patient with your family, and you still stop to help those who are crying. Marcus blinked. How could you possibly know that? Zara looked slightly embarrassed. Earth's internet is very comprehensive. Also, I may have had some assistance from Zetarian intelligence services over the years. You've been watching me? Marcus wasn't sure if he should be flattered or disturbed. Observing, Zara corrected. We needed to know if you remained worthy of a Zetarian bond. The reports were always positive. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, feeling overwhelmed. This is so much to process. I understand, Zara said. Is why I propose we start simply. What do you mean? Zara reached across the table and placed her hand gently over his. Her skin was warm, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation at the contact. Court me properly, she said. By your customs. Not mine. Take me on dates. Show me your world. Let me show you mine. If after 1 month you decide you cannot love me, I will return to Zatara and never speak of our promise again. Oh, yeah. And if I can learn to love you? Marcus asked, surprised by his own question. Zara's smile was radiant. Then we will have the most beautiful wedding the galaxy has ever seen. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his sister Emily's number, and he knew he was about to get the interrogation of his life. I should take this, he told Zara. Of course, she said, but she didn't move her hand from his. Marcus answered the phone. And Emily's voice immediately filled the kitchen. Marcus Chen. You have exactly 5 seconds to explain why my brother is engaged to an alien princess, and I had to find out from CNN. Marcus looked at Zara, who was listening with obvious amusement to his sister's rant. Despite everything, despite the insanity of the situation, Marcus found himself smiling. Emily, he said, it's complicated, but I think I'd like you to meet her. Zara squeezed his hand gently, and for the first time since she'd appeared on his doorstep, Marcus began to think that maybe, just maybe, this impossible situation might actually work out. Outside, the protesters continued their chanting. News crews maintained their vigil, and the world watched to see what would happen next. But inside Marcus's kitchen, 2 people from different worlds were taking the first tentative steps toward understanding each other. The promise made in kindness was slowly becoming something else entirely. 3 weeks into their unconventional courtship, Marcus had to admit that Zara was unlike anyone he'd ever known. She approached dating with the same methodical intensity she'd apparently applied to everything else in her life. She studied human customs, asked thoughtful questions about his work, and somehow made even simple activities, like grocery shopping, feel like adventures. Their first official date had been dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, where Zara had politely sampled every dish and declared marinara sauce a fascinating application of fruit chemistry. Their second date was a walk through the Portland Art Museum, where she'd spent 20 minutes analyzing a single abstract painting and explaining how Zetarian artists used color to convey emotional frequencies that humans couldn't perceive. By their third week together, Marcus found himself looking forward to her unique perspective on everything from coffee shops to action movies. Zara absorbed human culture with genuine fascination, while sharing carefully chosen details about her own world. She told him about Zetara's crystal forests that sang in the wind, about cities that floated on anagraph fields, about her peoples, the philosophy that true strength came from harmony between logic and emotion. What surprised Marcus most was how natural it felt to have her in his life. Zara adapted to Earth customs with grace, but she never tried to hide her alien nature. She slept only 4 hours per night, could hear conversations from 3 blocks away, and her eyes glowed faintly when she was happy or excited. She was undeniably other, but somehow that otherness made Marcus feel more human than he ever had before. It was on a Thursday morning, as they were having breakfast and planning a weekend trip to the coast, that everything changed. Marcus was reading news on his tablet when a headline caught his attention. Zetarian separatist movement gained support. The article detailed growing opposition on Zara's homeworld too, continued alliance with Earth, A faction called the Pure Path movement argued that Zetarians were diluting their culture by associating with primitive Suzar, Marcus said. Carefully, do you know anything about political problems on Zetera? Zara's expression immediately became guarded. What have you heard? Marcus showed her the article. She read, her face grew pale, and her hand began to tremble slightly. How bad is this? Marcus asked. Worse than Earth's media realizes, Zara admitted. The Pure Path movement is led by my cousin, Prince Kellen. He has always opposed our alliance with humanity. He sees our bonding as the perfect symbol of everything he believes is wrong with current Zetarian policy. What does that mean for us? Zara looked directly into his eyes. If our bonding fails, if you reject me publicly, Kellen will use it as proof that humans cannot be trusted to honor sacred commitments. It could provide the justification he needs. To break our alliance and possibly declare humans an inferior species unworthy of Zetarian friendship, Marcus felt the weight of two civilizations settling on his shoulders. So I don't really have a choice, do I? If I don't marry you, I could be responsible for destroying Earth's most important alliance. No, Zara said firmly. You always have a choice. I will not let you marry me out of duty or fear. If Kellen uses our situation to justify his politics, that is his failing, not yours. Before Marcus could respond, his apartment's security system chimed with an alert. The building's cameras showed 3 figures in dark clothing approaching through the morning mist. They moved with the fluid grace Marcus had learned to associate with Zetarians. But something about their posture suggested hostility. Zara was on her feet instantly, her hand moving to the ceremonial blade she always wore. Stay behind me, she ordered, her voice taking on a commanding tone Marcus had never heard before. The apartment's front door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and metal. 3 Zetarians in tactical gear rushed in, their weapons drawn. The leader, a tall male, with intricate scarification covering his silver skin, pointed his weapon directly at Marcus. Princess Zara, he said in accented English, by order of Prince Kellen, you will return with us immediately. The human is to be detained as a corrupting influence. I am bonded by sacred law, Zara replied, in what Marcus assumed was formal. Zetarian, you have no authority over me or my chosen mate. The leader laughed harshly. Your bonding is a sham, princess, a joke made by a child to an alien who cannot understand the significance of our ways. Prince Kellen offers you one chance, to return with honor and tact. My honor belongs to me alone, Zara said. In one fluid motion, she drew her blade and placed herself between Marcus and the intruders. What happened next lasted only seconds, but felt like hours. The 3 Zetarians moved within human speed, but Zara was faster. Her blade danced through the air, deflecting energy blasts and striking with surgical precision. She didn't kill, but within moments all 3 attackers were on the ground, disarmed and groaning. Marcus stared in shock. He'd known Zara had mentioned combat training, but seeing her in action was something else entirely. She moved like liquid mercury, deadly and beautiful at the same time. Are you injured? She asked, not even breathing hard. I'm fine, Marcus managed. But Zara, what just happened? Kellen is done with subtle politics, she said grimly. He decided to force the issue. Marcus's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. News feeds were lighting up with reports of Zetarian ships taking aggressive positions around Earth's major cities. Not an invasion, but definitely a show of force. He's making his move, Zara said, reading over Marcus's shoulder. Kellen is probably telling the Zetarian Council that I've been corrupted by human influence and that our bonding represents a threat to our species' purity. What do we do? Marcus asked. Zara looked at him with an expression that mixed determination with something that might have been love. We prove him wrong. But Marcus, if you stand with me now, there will be no going back. You'll be choosing not just me, but a future that will never be simple or safe. Marcus looked at this incredible woman who had traveled across the galaxy for a promise he'd forgotten he'd made. Over the past 3 weeks, he'd seen her kindness, her intelligence, her unwavering loyalty. He'd watched her struggle to understand human customs while never losing sight of her own values. He'd fallen, In love with her, he realized, not because of an old promise, but because of who she was in this moment. "I choose you," Marcus said simply. "Whatever comes next, I choose you." Zara's smile was radiant. "Then we fight together." Outside, the world held its breath as two species stood on the brink of conflict. But inside a damaged apartment in Portland, a human engineer and an alien princess prepared to prove that love could bridge any distance, overcome any obstacle, and unite any two hearts brave enough to try. The real battle was just beginning. The next 48 hours tested everything Marcus thought he knew about love, its loyalty, and the lengths people would go to protect what mattered most. Zara had immediately contacted the loyal Zetarian forces, calling for a formal challenge of truth, an ancient legal proceeding that would determine whether her bonding with Marcus was legitimate or a corruption that justified. Kellen's rebellion, what Marcus hadn't expected, was that he would be required to participate personally. "I have." "To do what?" he asked, staring at the holographic display Zara had set up in his living room. It showed the interior of a Zetarian ceremonial chamber where Prince Kellen waited with a sneer that transcended species barriers. "You must prove your worthiness to bond with a member of the royal house," Zara explained patiently. "This would involve demonstrations of strength, intelligence, and moral character. However, since you are human, allowances will be made." "What kind of allowances?" "You will not be required to fight Prince Kellen in personal combat," Zara said. "But you will need to demonstrate that your feelings for me are genuine, and that our bonding serves the greater good of both our peoples." The challenge of truth took place aboard the massive Zetarian flagship that had positioned itself in Earth's orbit. Marcus found himself standing in a crystalline chamber, surrounded by dozens of Zetarian nobles, their violet eyes studying him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Prince Kellen was everything Marcus had expected from a xenophobic separatist, tall, proud, and radiating contempt for everything human. His ceremonial armor was covered in medals and honors, and he carried himself with the absolute confidence of someone who had never been challenged. "So this is the human who has corrupted our princess?" Kellen said, his English perfect but cold. "A simple engineer who makes a mockery of our most sacred traditions?" Marcus felt his temper rise, but Zara's gentle hand on his arm reminded him to stay calm.
"Oh!"
This was bigger than his personal feelings. "I didn't come here to make a mockery of anything," Marcus said clearly. "I came here because I love Zara, and I'm willing to prove that love is stronger than the fear and hatred you're trying to spread." Kellen laughed. "Love? You mean the biological attraction that drives your primitive species? That is not love, human. That is chemistry." "Then let me show you the difference," Marcus replied. "What happened next would be talked about in both human and Zetarian history for generations." Marcus stepped forward and began to speak, not as someone defending himself, but as someone sharing the truth of what love had taught him. He talked about the frightened child Zara had been, and how a simple act of kindness had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. He spoke about the weeks of getting to know her, not as an alien princess, but as a woman with hopes, fears, and dreams that transcended species boundaries. But most importantly, Marcus talked about what their love could represent for both their worlds. "You say, I'm corrupting Zetarian traditions," Marcus told the assembled nobles. "But I think I'm helping them evolve. Zara hasn't become less Zetarian by loving me. She's become more herself. She's stronger, more confident, more capable of bridging the gap between our peoples." He turned to address the entire chamber. "Your ancestors made first contact with humanity because they believed in the possibility of growth through diversity. Are you going to abandon that wisdom because you're afraid of change?" Zara stepped forward, her ceremonial robes shimmering in the crystal chamber's light. "Marcus is right," she said in formal Zetarian, then switched to English so he could understand. "Our bonding is not a corruption of our traditions. It is their fulfillment. The sacred promise requires not just words, but the willingness to honor those words with action, with sacrifice, with love that transcends all boundaries." She looked directly at Prince Kellen. "Cousin, you speak of purity, but what is pure about hearts closed to compassion? What is noble about minds that refuse to grow? Marcus has shown me that true strength comes not from isolation, but from the courage to embrace what is different and find common ground. The chamber fell silent. Marcus could feel the weight of history balancing on the edge of a knife. Then from the back of the assembly, an elderly Zetarian female rose. Marcus recognized her as one of the village elders who had witnessed his original promise 15 years ago. "I was there when the promise was made," she said, her voice carrying the authority of age and wisdom. "I saw a young human show kindness to a child who needed it. I have watched that child grow into a woman worthy of any bond. And now I see that same human grown into a man willing to risk everything for love." She turned to the assembly. Sacred promise was witnessed and accepted. The bond has been tested by time and trial. Who among us dares claim it is false? One by one, the Zetarian nobles rose, their silence giving consent to the bond. Even some of Kellen's supporters began to shift uncomfortably, unwilling to stand against such clear evidence of genuine commitment. Prince Kellen's face darkened with fury. "This is meaningless sentiment," he declared. "A human cannot understand the true depth of Zetarian bonding. This entire proceeding is a farce designed to legitimize the contamination of our bloodlines." But his words fell flat in the face of what everyone had witnessed. Marcus stepped closer to Zara, taking her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, something extraordinary happened. A soft, warm light began to emanate from their joined hands, growing brighter until it filled the entire chamber with gentle radiance. The assembled Zetarians gasped. Even Kellen stepped back in shock. "The resonance," whispered the elderly witness. "The sacred light appears only when two souls are truly bonded. I have seen it perhaps 3 times in my entire life." Zara looked at Marcus with wonder. "I didn't know if it would work between our species," she admitted softly. "The resonance is said to appear only when two beings are perfectly matched in heart and spirit." Marcus stared at their glowing hands, feeling a warmth that seemed to flow through. "His entire being is this normal?" he asked. "Nothing about our love has been normal," Zara replied with a smile that made the light grow even brighter. "Why start now?" Prince Kellen's political coalition crumbled in that moment. Faced with undeniable proof that the bond between Marcus and Zara was not only genuine, but blessed by the deepest mysteries of Zetarian spirituality, his supporters abandoned him one by one. Within hours, he was stripped of his titles and exiled to a remote research station where his separatist ideologies could do no harm. The wedding ceremony took place 1 month later, broadcast simultaneously on Earth and Zetara. It was a blend of human and Zetarian traditions that created something entirely new and beautiful. Marcus wore a simple black tuxedo enhanced with Zetarian ceremonial crystals that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. Zara's wedding dress seemed to be woven from starlight itself, flowing and changing with her emotions. The ceremony was held in Portland's Crystal Springs Garden, chosen because its beauty reminded everyone of the crystal forests of Zetara. Representatives from both species attended, along with Marcus's family, who had flown in from around the world to witness their son marry an alien princess as they exchanged vows. The resonance appeared again, stronger than before. The light that flowed between them seemed to touch everyone present, human and Zetarian alike, creating a moment of perfect understanding between two species. "I promise to love you across any distance," Marcus said, "to honor the bond we've created, and to help build a future where our two worlds can grow together." "I promise to cherish the kindness that brought us together," Zara replied, "to stand with you against any challenge, and to prove that love is the strongest force in any galaxy." When they kissed, the light exploded outward in gentle waves, and for just a moment, every person present felt what it was like to love someone from another world completely and without reservation. The years that followed were everything Marcus and Zara had hoped for and more. Their marriage became a symbol of cooperation between Earth and Zetara, opening new possibilities for cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and interstellar friendship. They established the Chenzara Foundation, which sponsored exchange programs between young humans and Zetarians. Ensuring that future generations would grow up understanding each other, Marcus adapted to his role as unofficial human ambassador to Zatara while continuing his engineering work on projects that benefited both worlds. Zara became Earth's most effective spokesperson for interstellar cooperation. Using her unique perspective to help humans understand their place in the larger galactic community, they had 3 children together, beautiful beings who inherited the best of both species and seemed to glow with their own inner light. The children grew up bilingual and bicultural, equally at home on Earth, or Zatara, living proof that love could not only bridge the gap between worlds, but create something entirely new. On their 10th wedding anniversary, as they sat in their garden watching their youngest daughter play with holographic butterflies that shifted between Earth and Zetarian forms, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them together. "Do you ever regret it?" asked Zara, waiting 15 years for a promise that started as a joke. Zara smiled, the same radiant expression that had first captured his heart. "Never," she said. "Sometimes the most important promises are the ones we make without thinking. They come from the truest part of ourselves." She leaned against his shoulder, and the familiar warmth of the resonance flowed between them, gentle and constant after. "All these years, besides," she added with a laugh. "Who else can say their marriage literally brought 2 worlds together?" Marcus kissed the top of her silver hair, breathing in the scent that reminded him of crystal forests and distant stars. "I love you, Princess Zara of Zatara. I love you, Engineer Marcus of Earth," she replied. "My husband, my heart, my home." Above them, ships from both worlds crossed the sky in peaceful formation, carrying trade goods, students, families, and dreams between the stars. What had started as a simple act of kindness to a crying child had grown into something that changed the course of galactic history. The promise made in innocence had become a love that would echo through the cosmos for generations to come, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary destinies begin with the smallest acts of compassion. In the end, Marcus and Zara's story was proof that love truly was the strongest force in any galaxy, capable of bridging any distance and uniting any 2 hearts brave enough to believe in each other. Their never-ending story had found its perfect beginning.